Cale Verdon had built his life proving he was more than instinct. At 26, he was already CEO of Verdon Global, the youngest in the corporation's history. Business magazines called him visionary. Investors called him decisive. His father, a man whose approval had always been conditional, called him worthy at last. Cale understood one rule better than anyone: nothing was allowed to threaten the empire. Not scandal, not weakness, and certainly not something as unpredictable as love. He met Leo on a day he didn't belong in. His car had broken down near the old district, where glass towers gave way to narrow streets, faded shop signs, and buildings that had stopped pretending to be new. While waiting for his driver, Cale stepped into a small second-hand bookstore to escape the heat and dust. The bell above the door gave a tired chime as he entered, and the air smelled of paper, sun-warmed wood, and time. Leo worked there? Ink smudged his fingers. His sweater sleeves were worn thin at the cuffs. He didn't recognize the name Verdon or the face that occasionally appeared in financial magazines. He only saw a tall man standing in front of the philosophy shelf. "You're blocking the good stuff," Leo said absently, trying to slide past him with a stack of books. Cale turned, caught off guard. People usually approached him with caution, calculation, or flattery. This Omega sounded mildly inconvenienced. "I didn't realize knowledge required permission," Cale replied. Leo looked up then, meeting his eyes, and instead of shrinking, he smiled, small, amused, unafraid. "You look like you need something that isn't in the business section." Cale should have left. Instead, he bought a novel he didn't understand just to stay longer. He told himself it was curiosity. He returned the next week. Then again, sometimes he bought books, sometimes he simply stayed and listened while Leo talked about stories, about people, about how lives couldn't be reduced to numbers or outcomes. They shared cheap takeout on the bookstore steps one evening, city noise humming around them, and Leo asked, almost gently, "Do you ever get tired of everyone wanting something from you?" Cale paused, chopsticks hovering. "What makes you think they do?" "You have the look," Leo said, "like you're always bracing." "And what do you want?" Cale asked, testing him. Leo blinked, genuinely confused. "Right now, for you to eat before the noodles get cold." It was such a simple answer, free of angle or expectation, that it unsettled him. That answer followed Cale home. With Leo, silence didn't feel strategic, it felt like rest. Cale laughed more easily, spoke without rehearsing his words first, and forgot for brief stretches of time the weight of being responsible for thousands of employees and a legacy built over decades. He hadn't realized how heavy leadership was until he set it down for a few hours at a time. That frightened him, how much he needed those hours, how easily he could imagine a life built around them. Rumors traveled faster than truth in Cale's world. It didn't take long for someone important to see them together. A board member mentioned it lightly, almost amused. "People from that district know opportunity when they see it." Another laughed and added that Omegas were good at attaching themselves. Cale hadn't defended Leo. He told himself it wasn't worth the discussion, that his personal life didn't require explanation. But the words lingered, quiet and persistent, and slowly they changed the way he looked at something that had once felt uncomplicated. Leo noticed the shift before Cale admitted it. Messages became shorter. Plans were canceled. The easy warmth between them cooled into something careful and distant. One evening, Leo stood in Cale's penthouse, marble floors gleaming, glass walls reflecting a skyline that seemed to stretch forever, and asked softly, "Did I do something?" Cale stood by the window, city lights mirrored in his expression. "You knew who I was," he said. "I knew your name. You knew my position, my resources." Understanding dawned slowly across Leo's face, and it hurt more than anger would have. "You think I'm with you for money." "I think," Cale said, his voice tight, "that I can't afford mistakes." "I never asked you for anything." "That doesn't mean you wouldn't." The silence that followed didn't erupt, it folded in on itself, heavy and final. Cale wasn't trying to be cruel. That would have been simpler. He looked torn, pressured, afraid not of Leo, but of losing control over the life he had fought to secure. "My world is complicated," he said. "One scandal could destabilize everything." "I'm a scandal," Leo's voice wavered despite his effort to stay steady. Cale didn't answer, and that absence of denial said more than words could. "I thought you saw me," Leo said. "I did," Cale replied quietly. "That's why this is dangerous." "For who?" Leo asked. Cale didn't say for me, but they both heard it anyway. "I don't care what people think," Leo said. "I do." Love stood on one side, fear stood on the other. Fear won. Cale left without another conversation. No fight, no goodbye, just absence where a future had been. The next morning, Leo worked a full shift at the bookstore before checking his phone. One message waited, "This can't continue, it's better this way." Leo read it again and again as if repetition might make the words kinder. They didn't. 3 weeks later, the clinic smelled like antiseptic and lemon cleaner. The doctor's voice was gentle as she spoke. "You're about 7 weeks along." Leo's hand moved to his stomach, trembling as the meaning settled in. 7 weeks, back to nights in a penthouse that had never felt like home. Back to a man who had looked at him like a risk instead of a person. Leo stepped outside into the afternoon sun, the world bright and distant, and pressed his palm flat against his abdomen. "He thinks I wanted his money," he whispered to the empty air. "He doesn't even know." His voice broke, then steadied with quiet resolve. "Then I'll do this without him." And high above the city, in a glass office brushing the clouds, Cale Verdon signed contracts worth millions, never realizing the only thing that had ever truly been his was already growing beyond his reach. 5 years taught Cale Verdon how to win. Verdon Global expanded into 3 new countries. His name appeared on magazine covers beside words like dominant, strategic, untouchable. He negotiated mergers that crushed competitors and made decisions that moved markets. He lived in a penthouse that overlooked the entire city, walls of glass reflecting a skyline he technically owned pieces of. He had everything he had worked for. He also slept alone. The quiet in his apartment was not peaceful, it echoed. Meals tasted like obligation. Achievements felt like numbers on a screen, visible, impressive, and strangely weightless. He told himself this was the cost of leadership, the price of discipline, proof that he had chosen correctly. He never let himself think about the bookstore, or the Omega with ink-stained fingers, or the warmth he had once mistaken for danger. But memory has its own instincts. And it waited. Cale returned to his hometown only when business demanded it. This visit was meant to be brief, a meeting with local investors, a site inspection, a formal dinner. His schedule ran with the precision of a machine. Still, after the last meeting ended earlier than expected, he found himself walking without direction, hands in his coat pockets, tie loosened slightly as if his body craved air his mind wouldn't admit it needed. He didn't realize where he was going until the streets grew narrower, older, familiar. The old district. The realization made him slow, but not turn back. The park appeared between buildings like a memory that hadn't faded with time. The paint on the benches was chipped, and the swings creaked with each push, but the place hummed with life, children running, parents calling, sunlight slanting gold through late afternoon leaves. Cale stopped near the entrance, meaning only to stand there a moment before leaving. Then he saw him,